I would say more pride. I think it depends how you look at it, and I try to take it in with as much gratitude as I possibly.
Nagawa pa ng viral globally ang isang piling-piling kasabihan nating mga Pilipino. Nag-file po ako ng resolution para kilalanin ng Senado.
Alex Eala destroys senator in 15 seconds flat. The mic drop heard around the world that has all of Philippines in an uproar. Welcome back to Champions Tennisitics, the only place on the internet where the drama hits harder than a Djokovic return, and the stories are always worth your precious time. I am so glad you are here today, because what we are about to unpack is not just a sports story. It is not just a political scandal. It is a full-blown, earth-shattering cultural earthquake that has rocked the Philippines from the Senate halls of Manila all the way to the practice courts of the professional tennis circuit. And the aftershocks are still being felt as we speak. So get comfortable, settle in, and let me paint you the complete picture of the most explosive off-court confrontation in Philippine sports history, because this one has absolutely everything. Power, ambition, boundaries, courage, and one of the most devastatingly clean verbal shutdowns you will ever witness in your entire life. Let us set the stage properly, because to truly appreciate the magnitude of what Alex Eala did, you need to understand the world she exists in right now. At just 21 years old, Alexandra Eala is not merely a promising tennis talent. She is a full-blown international phenomenon, a once-in-a-generation athlete who has dragged Philippine tennis onto the global stage with her bare hands and a backhand that would make the greatest players in history nod in quiet respect. She has competed on the biggest stages the sport has to offer. She has faced down opponents ranked among the world's elite and come out swinging. She trained at the legendary Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain, an institution that does not produce soft, easily rattled athletes. That place produces warriors. It produces champions with an almost frightening level of mental clarity and competitive focus. When you emerge from that environment, when you have had the privilege of absorbing the philosophy of one of the greatest champions the sport has ever seen, you develop a certain kind of psychological armor that very few people in this world can penetrate. Politicians included, especially politicians. Now, on the other side of this spectacular collision, we have Senator Risa Hontiveros, one of the most prominent and vocal political figures in the Philippines. A senator of considerable reputation and influence, Hontiveros has built her entire political brand around progressive advocacy, with LGBT rights sitting front and center in her legislative agenda. She is passionate, she is driven, she is relentless, and she commands enormous respect within her political sphere. In the world she moves through, when Risa Hontiveros asks for something, people generally find a way to deliver. She is used to doors opening, used to people leaning in when she speaks, used to her requests being treated with the weight that comes with holding a seat in the Philippine Senate. What she is apparently not used to is being told no, firmly, cleanly, and with absolutely zero apology. And that, dear viewers, is precisely what happened, and why the entire internet has completely lost its collective mind over this story. According to the reports flooding in from every corner of the Philippine media landscape, Senator Hontiveros approached Alex Eala with a proposal that she probably believed was a win-win situation. The pitch, as it has been widely reported, was straightforward in its audacity. The senator wanted Eala to publicly endorse her LGBT advocacy work. She wanted Eala's image, her name, her brand, and her enormous international platform to be used in promoting these political causes at Eala's upcoming tournaments on the global circuit. Think about that for a moment. Think about what that actually means. Hontiveros was not simply asking Eala to express a personal opinion. She was asking her to become a walking billboard for a political agenda at the exact events where Eala is meant to be representing herself as a professional athlete, as a competitor, as a sportswoman. She was asking to essentially commandeer the spotlight that Eala has spent years of brutal, sacrificial training to build and redirect it toward a political campaign. Now, whatever your personal views on the specific causes being championed, that ask is breathtaking in its presumptuousness. The senator looked at this young woman's hard-earned global platform and apparently thought, yes, I want a piece of that.
Nagawa pa ng viral globally ang isang piling-piling kasabihan nating mga Pilipino. Nag-file po ako ng resolution para kilalanin ng Senado.
I will take some of that shine. I deserve access to that audience. The assumption buried in that request is frankly staggering when you examine it honestly. It assumes that because Eala is young, she will be impressionable. It assumes that because the cause being promoted is positioned as virtuous, no reasonable person could possibly say no without looking heartless. It assumes that the power dynamic between a sitting senator and a young athlete is so overwhelming that compliance is the only logical outcome. It assumes, most devastatingly of all, that Eala does not know exactly who she is, what she stands for, and what she refuses to be used for. Every single one of those assumptions turned out to be catastrophically wrong. Because here is what actually happened. Eala, without hesitation, without nervousness, without the kind of stumbling, apologetic deflection we might expect from someone caught off guard by a powerful political figure, looked the senator dead in the eye and delivered a response that has since gone supernova across social media. I am an athlete, not a tool for your political agenda. That was it. That was the whole thing. Clean, precise, devastating. It landed like an ace on match point, unhittable and completely definitive. There was no softening of the blow, no diplomatic hedging. No, I really respect your work, but maybe we could explore this further at a later date. There was just the cold, hard, unapologetic truth, delivered by someone who clearly had zero interest in managing the senator's feelings about receiving it. And then, because apparently one perfectly crafted sentence was not quite enough to fully convey the totality of her position, Eala followed up in the next 15 seconds, in what has now become the most talked about brief statement in recent Philippine sports history. She made it emphatically clear that her professional life and political issues exist in entirely separate universes that she has no intention of allowing to merge. She is on that court to compete. She is on that court to win. She is on that court to represent her country through the timeless, meritocratic language of athletic excellence. And she will not be redirected, repositioned, or repackaged for anyone's political agenda, no matter how powerful that anyone might happen to be. And then, with the match comprehensively won, Eala turned and walked away, leaving a reportedly stunned and visibly furious Senator Hontiveros standing in a silence so loud you could practically hear it echoing. The reports of Hontiveros' reaction are almost as fascinating as Eala's response itself. According to sources close to the situation, the senator was not just surprised. She was genuinely, deeply infuriated. You could almost understand why, from a purely human perspective. Hontiveros is someone who operates in environments where status and influence determine outcomes, where the ability to apply social and political pressure is a core tool of the trade. She walked into that interaction expecting a certain response, one that her position and the nature of her request seemed to guarantee in her mind. Instead, she walked into a wall. A politely constructed, firmly maintained, completely immovable wall, built by a young woman who has clearly spent considerable time deciding exactly who she is and exactly what she will and will not tolerate. The fury that followed is the fury of someone who genuinely did not see that coming. And that, perhaps more than anything else, tells you everything you need to know about how seriously politicians in this country have been underestimating the new generation of Philippine athletes. Now let us talk about the eruption that followed in the wider world, because the public reaction to this story has been nothing short of extraordinary. When the details of this encounter began spreading across social media, the response was immediate, overwhelming, and almost universal in its direction. People are absolutely loving this. Fans of Eala from the Philippines and from across the international tennis community have been flooding comment sections, timelines, and forums with an outpouring of support so intense it is practically impossible to overstate. The praise being heaped on the young tennis star is coming from every conceivable direction. Sports fans are cheering her courage. People who have grown weary of the constant politicization of sports are using her as their rallying cry. Young athletes from other disciplines are sharing the story and talking about how they too have felt the pressure to become political mouthpieces for causes that have nothing to do with why they picked up their respective sports in the first place. The comment sections are absolutely overflowing with takes that range from the deeply thoughtful to the hilariously dramatic, and honestly, every single one of them is bringing the same energy. People are writing things like, "This girl has more backbone than most sitting politicians." They are writing, She did in 15 seconds what most people cannot do in 15 years. They are writing, finally, someone said it. Leave athletes alone and let them play. The internet, famously divided on approximately everything, has managed to find something approaching consensus here, and that consensus is ringing with thunderous applause for Eala. She did not just win an off-court confrontation. She sparked a conversation that people across the Philippines and beyond have clearly been desperate to have for a very long time. The broader debate this has ignited is one that extends far beyond Eala and Hontiveros specifically, and it is a debate that really deserves serious examination. There is a very real and growing tension in modern sports culture between the expectation that athletes should use their platform and the equally valid principle that athletes have every right to keep their professional identity distinct from political activism. The argument in favor of athlete activism is well known and has plenty of genuinely compelling examples behind it. Muhammad Ali, Billie Jean King, Naomi Osaka, these are athletes whose willingness to speak out on social and political issues became inseparable from their legacies and contributed meaningfully to real-world change. That tradition is real, it is powerful, and it deserves respect. But here is the thing that too many people conveniently forget when they march toward athletes with political requests in hand. Every single one of those iconic activist athletes chose their causes themselves. Nobody showed up and told Muhammad Ali which war to refuse to fight in. Nobody showed up and handed Billie Jean King a script and a cause and said, "Smile for the cameras. Your platform belongs to us now." The activism that truly resonates, the kind that actually moves the needle and changes hearts and minds, comes from athletes who have made a genuine, personal, deeply felt decision to speak out. Forced activism is not activism. It is performance. It is exploitation. It is exactly what Senator Hontiveros was attempting to extract from Eala.
Nagawa pa niyang viral globally ang isang piling-piling kasabihan nating mga Pilipino. Nag-file po ako ng resolution para
And it is precisely why Eala's refusal is not just understandable, but genuinely admirable. She refused to participate in a performance she did not choose and did not believe in, and in doing so, she demonstrated a form of integrity that is increasingly rare in an era where young people are constantly pressured to perform social virtue for the approval of those with more power. There is also a very specific and important point to be made about the vulnerability of young athletes in exactly these kinds of situations. Eala is 21 years old. She is in the middle of a career that demands literally everything from her. Her diet, her sleep, her travel schedule, her training load, her mental energy, every single aspect of her existence is organized around the goal of becoming the best tennis player she is capable of being. The pressure that comes with pursuing that goal at the international level is almost incomprehensible to those of us who have never experienced it. To show up in the middle of that extraordinarily demanding journey and demand that a young woman also carry the weight of your political agenda, to treat her hard-earned public profile as a resource that is available for your use simply because you hold a position of political power, is not just presumptuous. It borders on exploitative. And the fact that Eala recognized that dynamic clearly enough to shut it down immediately at 21 years old is frankly remarkable. There is also an interesting and somewhat delicious subplot developing among the Philippine sports community more broadly. Coaches, former athletes, and sports administrators who have quietly watched young Filipino stars get pulled in all directions by external demands are apparently celebrating this moment quite vocally behind the scenes. There has long been a sense within Philippine sports culture that the country's athletes, particularly the young and newly famous ones, are too often treated as community property, as resources to be deployed for causes that have nothing to do with the actual sports they dedicated their lives to. Eala's stand, so public and so unambiguous, has given voice to a frustration that many in the sporting community have felt for years but lacked the platform or the courage to express as directly. The ripple effects of what she did in those 15 seconds may well be felt in Philippine sports culture for a very long time. And through all of it, through the media storm and the social media frenzy and the political maneuvering and the chorus of support roaring from every direction, Eala has reportedly remained entirely, almost eerily calm. She is back on the practice court. She is working on her serve. She is studying her opponents. She is doing the only thing she has ever promised anyone she would do, which is show up every single day and be the best tennis player she is capable of being. That image of the chaos swirling around her name while she simply continues to do her work in quiet, focused determination is perhaps the most powerful statement of all. She does not need to hold press conferences about this. She does not need to post lengthy explanations on social media. She said what she needed to say in 15 seconds, and everything that has happened since has simply confirmed that she was right. There is something genuinely historic about this moment, and it would be a mistake to let it pass without fully appreciating its significance. What Alex Eala did represents something bigger than one confrontation between one athlete and one politician. It represents a generational shift in how young athletes understand and assert their own power. For decades, the assumption has been that fame comes with obligations, that when society makes you a star, society gets to decide at least partly what that star stands for. Eala has challenged that assumption directly and with spectacular effectiveness. She has said, in terms too clear to be misunderstood, that her fame belongs to her, that her image belongs to her, that her platform belongs to her, and that she alone will decide how those things are used. She built them. Nobody handed them to her. She earned them on clay courts and hard courts and grass courts across the globe, through years of sacrifice and dedication and the kind of relentless pursuit of excellence that most people can only observe from a distance and admire. The idea that a politician can simply walk up to that lifetime of work and say, "Give me some of that," and expect compliance, is the idea that Eala dismantled in 15 seconds. And in doing so, she did not just stand up for herself. She stood up for every young athlete who has ever felt pressured to become something other than what they trained their whole life to be. She stood up for every Filipino sports star who has ever been made to feel that their sporting achievements are somehow less important or less valid than their ability to serve as a vehicle for someone else's agenda. She stood up for the radical, beautiful idea that a tennis player's job is to play tennis, that excellence in sport is itself a form of contribution to society, and that it is enough. It is more than enough. It is extraordinary and rare and precious, and it should be allowed to exist on its own terms without being hijacked and turned into a political prop. This story will keep developing, because stories this combustible always do. There will be responses and counter-responses, probably some carefully worded political statements designed to reframe the narrative, possibly some attempts to downplay the significance of what happened. But the 15-second statement is already permanent. It already exists in the cultural record. Alex Eala already won this match, and she won it in the most emphatic way possible, not with a lengthy rebuttal or a carefully prepared press release, but with the kind of swift, instinctive, perfectly executed response that separates true champions from everyone else. She read the situation, she processed it in real time, and she delivered the perfect shot. Game, set, match. Champions Tennisitics is going to keep watching this story extremely closely, because we have a feeling we are nowhere near the last chapter. As Eala continues to climb the rankings, as her profile continues to grow, as she edges closer and closer to the biggest stages that global tennis has to offer, you can absolutely guarantee that more people with more power and more agendas are going to come knocking. What we now know, with absolute certainty, is that they will be met at the door by someone who knows exactly who she is and exactly what answer they are going to get. That is the story of the week, the story of the month, and honestly, the story that may define the early career of one of the most compelling athletes the Philippines has ever produced. Not because of anything that happened inside the lines of a tennis court, but because of what happened when someone tried to drag her off that court and she refused to go. Now we want to hear everything you have to say about this, and we mean everything. Do you think Alex Eala made exactly the right call by shutting down Senator Hontiveros so firmly and so fast? Or do you think athletes with massive platforms have a responsibility to lend their voice to social and political causes, even when they would personally prefer not to? There is no wrong answer here. This is a genuinely complex and fascinating debate, and we want to hear every side of it. Drop your take in the comments section right now. The spicier the better, because that is what this community is built for. If this story got your blood pumping and your brain going, do us a massive favor and smash that like button into the ground. It genuinely helps us keep bringing you the stories that matter. Make sure you are subscribed and that you have the notification bell turned all the way on, because Champions Tennisitics is not slowing down for a single second. Big stories are coming, Big matches are coming, and you do not want to be the last one to know. Until next time, keep your eyes on the court, keep your standards high, and we will see you right back here where the best in tennis lives.
Nagawa pa ng viral globally ang isang piling-piling kasabihan nating mga Pilipino. Nag-file po ako ng resolution para kilalanin ng Senado